All right. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Double B Creates, where we talk to business owners, CEOs, influencers, anyone who's self-employed about their lives, who they are, and where they're going in the future. So without any more rambling, today we're talking to Kirby Ingles, and we're very excited to talk to you today. And thanks for giving us the time.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So go ahead and tell us about yourself, man. What is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm a leadership and transformation coach. I'm a father of 5 and a U.S. Army veteran, and so basically, as far as the leadership and coaching world goes, is I work with a lot of veterans and fatherless men, and I help them find a intentional direction in their life, and hopefully they find what I would term is true success. And that's really getting beyond all the tangibles, all the titles and all the lickies and chewies, and actually really have an impact not only in their lives but in the people around them, and really establish some type of legacy which lasts 2 or 3 generations, and really develop a good set of values in how they serve themselves and other people. So
Very cool. And you just had your 5th kid.
Yeah, I did, Jeff. Number 5. So 4 boys and 1 little girl.
Nice.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's your hands
Outnumbered.
full. She'll be well protected when she gets older.
Yeah, that was actually kind of nice because I got a 16-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and then my daughter's 2, and then we just had Jacob, who's the newborn, who's about 3 days old, and so she's kind of bookmarked or bookended. So
Nice.
There's boys on both sides of her.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
And then you said that you're working with fatherless men. Is that what?
Yeah, so I do work with fatherless men. So I grew up in a fatherless home. I had 3 stepdads. I don't know who my biological father is. And what I found is a lot of those guys just need leadership, right? They've just never had that father figure growing up, and they're kind of lost in life. They're searching for meaning and purpose, and, they're looking for some kind of mentorship or even coaching. And they find themselves with sometimes some bad behaviors. And the other thing that I like to try to do is help them understand, who they are, kind of rewrite the narrative of their life. So that way they're not living this I'm a victim mentality, and they really overcome all this adversity that they've faced in life. And they're really the hero. They've come out on the other end, and they can have such a huge impact. And hopefully they decide to go back and help, other fatherless boys growing up and be a mentor and a male role model, a healthy, supportive male role model, and be that thing that they didn't have growing up. So it's just kind of that reciprocal, giving back constantly. So, and trying to kind of help change the way we have, our society, because what I found is that every major societal ill in our country is a result of having fatherless men. And the fatherless men have the highest suicide rates. They are the highest imprisonment rate. They are recently contributed to almost every mass shooting in America. The more prolific drug and alcohol abuse, domestic abuse, teen pregnancy, everything, that bothers our nation today, they are a part of that common denominator. I find that, if we have more healthy, supportive role models and male figures in these boys' lives, then a lot of this stuff starts to go away. So.
Yeah, we actually had that in common. I never met my father either. I know his first name. Never. I saw one picture of him once, and I didn't realize all of that other stuff that you just mentioned. But one of the biggest things that I noticed with my own self, well, actually my wife pointed it out, so I got to give her the credit. She goes, "You have a hard time building relationships with men. Like, you talk to females all the time just fine, and then you shut down when you're talking to a guy." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. It is what it is." She goes, I think it's because you grew up with just your mom in the house." And I went, "Oh, shit."
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot too. And, a lot of times we develop this autocratic leadership style. We're constantly competing with other men because we never had that father figure growing up. So we have to um, uh, push ourselves to the point to where we have to make up for that, right? And so we feel like, and maybe consciously or unconsciously, do you just feel like, you're missing out on something, so you have to push harder and harder and harder, and you're always competing. You don't have to outperform these people because you feel like they have this competitive advantage. In all actuality, um, you've kind of been put to the ringer and you've already been tested, and you have developed a lot of great qualities growing up that you didn't have, without a father. But it'd been nice if you had a father, because you wouldn't have had to go through all that. It's just a difference on how you look at it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. I know I have, not just Kevin as a friend that doesn't have a dad, but others, and they go through the same thing. And people ask me, like, how do you cope? Because I've asked them a bunch of times, like, we don't know. We just kind of go. We just try to function and not even think about it and not deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the things I did notice, you just try and figure it out. So I was a latchkey kid. So my mom, she worked all the time, and, and I had brothers and sisters at home, and I didn't want to be around all, babies changing diapers all the time. So I was kind of outside the house running around all the time. And I looked up to older boys, that for mentorship, and then whatever they were getting involved in, I was getting involved in. So even at an early age, I was involved in drug and alcohol abuse because I was chasing kids that were 3 to 5 years older than me. I was hanging out with them, and there was no parental figure around to kind of really help. And my mother did the best she could, but she still had to work, and she still had to, take care of babies at home. And, I was the oldest of 4. So, I had to take care of myself. And as long as she was okay with a lot of things, as long as I didn't get in trouble and go to jail. So I was able to kind of extend, my ability to kind of get myself into trouble. But once, the cops started getting involved, or she started getting phone calls from the authorities or the school, that's when things started to get a little heated at the house. So as long as I kind of maintained that barrier, that distance, I was good to go. So I got to explore the world, which was kind of nice. I think I figured out a lot of things early on in life than probably most people. When they're probably just figuring out when they're going to college or out of college. I kind of had about a 10-year head start on most of them. So,
yeah, it's funny because I did the same thing. Like, everybody I hung out with was 3 to 4 years older than me. Yeah. And I think I got really lucky because most of the guys I hung out with as a kid are either in jail or they're dead.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, they got into whatever, Yeah. So
yeah, I'll tell you, man. I was reading this book. I think it was called Fatherless America or something like that. And but it was written by I think it was a clergyman, and up in Kansas City. And he was in there. He was talking about, he went across. There was this drug dealer that constantly stood up, across the street from his church or his parishioner. And he went outside one day and he went across the street to ask him, and said, what is it that you have that we don't have? It's like, and you would think, the church provides a lot, for these kids and these families and stuff. And he's like, I'm here and you're not. I'm here and their fathers aren't. We're here, and these kids are looking for somebody to look up to, and we're providing them safety, security, and all these things, and money, and fame, and all this other stuff, we're giving them power by giving them weapon, and all these things. And nobody else is doing that. And so they had this vacancy. And so boys need to fill that void, that vacancy in their lives. And those are the people that are available. And they have these things that they give them, which makes them kind of feel like they're powerful. And, they give them this, they feel this vacancy or this void in their life. And it just ends up leading to trouble at the end of the day. I mean, we don't see that, you're too young and immature at the beginning. For me, I don't know what the hell I was thinking and doing, but, looking back on it, I'm like, that was stupid, but, I'm 40 years old now, so it's a different story, and even when I was 30, 35 years old, I look back and I'm like, God, what was I thinking back then, but I just needed some companionship, some fellowship, I needed people that accepted me, and they didn't really care who I came from and who my dad was and who my mom was. I was just a part of the group. And so I became, part of, the crew. I kind of got absorbed in, and, that's, it didn't matter who you were or what you did, or, who your parents were, or if your father was around, or, was actually kind of better that your parents weren't around. So,
Funny enough, I'm 31, and I have that same feeling all the time because people like, well, why'd you do all that stuff? I don't know, because I was stupid. And they're like, well, but what about this? Don't do it. Well, but I want to try it. Just don't. I've been there. I've done it. Don't do it. And to follow on with Kevin, I think I hung out with like 40 friends and through middle school to high school, and I think almost 30 of them are either in jail or dead. And it's like, what happened? Like, where did it all change? They were all great guys in high school, and then what changed? And it's kind of depressing to hear about it sometimes, because it's like, a lot of them were good guys. I mean, they weren't, a guy that I'd invite to date my daughter, but
yeah. That's an interesting question, or conversation, because my wife asks me all the time. She's like, "What are you gonna do when your kids start doing this stuff?" And I'm like, "They're not gonna hear the end of it, right? Because I've already been through it. I understand it. I've got the T-shirt, And I was like, just because I made the same mistakes doesn't mean I can allow my children to make the same mistakes, And I had to go through that, right, to really have an impact on them and to raise them better. Because if that's not the case, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today if I wouldn't have gone through that. So I'm not upset about it. I'm not mad about it. I'm okay with the way things happened and they turned out. I mean, I'm still standing here alive, and I would say I've been successful for the most part. I did 23 years in the Army, and I've got 5 children. So obviously something worked out, but that was my, probably my growing point. That was my obstacle in the world, and I had to overcome it. And once I did, doors opened up after that. And, it probably taught me to be a little bit tougher skinned, a little bit more hard nosed. And, it taught me some really valuable lessons growing up that probably other people just didn't get, and like I said earlier, I mean, they probably didn't really face any real true hardships until maybe after they got out of college, and now they have this, $200,000 student loan they got to pay off, and they're like, oh crap, what am I going to do? I faced adversity when I was like 8 years old, living with a single mother, recently divorced a second time, or first time, I'm sorry. Living in low income housing in a trailer park, and it's just, it was tough, and not having anybody to go to. So, I mean, you kind of learn, you get, I guess you call it the University of Hard Knocks, but.
Well, and it seems that a lot of people nowadays that they'll ask you like, how do you get through that stuff? And it's like, well, it's because I've been through the University of Hard Knocks. And kids and even millennials now, it seems like their entire world's going to crumble down because they haven't had the adversity in their life, and now they're just learning it, and it's just shooting everything to the ground.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a major problem, and I honestly, sometimes I don't think it's, and I don't want to cast any blame anywhere, but I don't want to cast blame on them because they didn't raise themselves. We raised them.
Yeah.
And we failed, I would say we failed as parents, and I would say I kind of grew up in that age a little bit, because I remember going to soccer practice and we get a participation trophy, or not soccer practice, but soccer. And I got a participation trophy. And the first thing I kind of thought was, man, we took 5th place. We were dead last in the league. Why the heck am I getting a plaque? I mean, I remember that thought crossing my mind when I was like 11 years old. But it's kind of funny, because that's really when it started. The participation trophies, and everybody's a winner and all these other things. And it's like, man, you just have to take some licks on the chin, for you really to be able to get through this life, and it's when life really first smacks you in the face, and you're an adult and you don't have anybody there to pick you back up. That's when it gets bad, or, you need to do that when you have parents around, when you're growing up. You need to experience that, and you need to be, and I'm not saying bullying is okay, but I got in some schoolyard fights, and I had some older boys beat me up, and I'm probably better off for that because, I learned to keep my mouth shut when I shouldn't have been mouthing off, it's just, But I mean, but I think it goes to one extreme or the other. But I think, some of that can really be, healthy in a sort of way. And prepare us for life, and give us that ability to kind of, take some of those blows that comes our way, and we're able to handle a little better.
And I would have to agree with that. I mean, I can't remember the entire quote, but it's from one of the Rockies. Is life's going to hit you harder than anything else is going to, and that's the truth that I've found. And it doesn't matter how hard it hits you. You got to figure a way to get yourself back up, because in the long run, nobody can help you get back up unless you're willing to get back up.
Yeah, and actually, that's kind of funny because I said that. I said that on a Facebook Live the other day, as I was like, all you have is yourself. I mean, you can count on other people, but really at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. And if you're not willing to get up and help yourself, there's nothing anybody else can do. We can throw everything at you. We can, all of our support around you. But if you're not willing to, move forward and get up and fight on, we can't help you. You have to make a choice. So
what got you into coaching?
Yeah, so that's a pretty long story short. I was at Fort Myer, Virginia. I was serving in the old guard at Arlington Cemetery, and I was the senior advisor for the commander, which is the first sergeant. And I was sitting there, and I was in that vacancy for about 6 months, and I was like, and I was doing a lot of career development, teaching, coaching, mentoring young soldiers and stuff like that. And I was to the point where I was like, you know what? I says, I really don't want to go back to my job because I was an HR guy. I was like, all I do is go to meetings, write policy, and, manage a team of five guys. And I was like, I just, if this is what the corporate world's like when I get out of the military, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be stuck in a cubicle, writing policy, going to meetings. And I says, I can't stand this. So I did some soul searching and, figured out what I liked is I liked problem solving, because anytime somebody came in my office and said, I got this issue, but I don't think you can help me, I'd be like, well, let me see if I can figure out a way. Let me just find the gray area. There's the black and the white. Let me see if I can find the gray area and find a solution to your problem. And I was great at that. I'd always work for people and do that. And then, the other thing for me was working with people individually. So I kind of did some soul searching, and I liked the career development field. I love the self-help world, the personal growth. So I decided, I started doing some triangulation, and I was like, I finally, I thought counseling was going to be the world I wanted to go into. So I ended up going to Liberty University. I got a master's in counseling. And then while I was there, I ran across coaching, and I took a couple courses on coaching, and then I just kind of fell in love with it. It's not necessarily regulated. You don't have to get a state license or anything. You can go out and get certifications, but it's not a requirement. And plus, you're just a small business owner for the most part, and you can grow as big as you want. If you want to have this big training and coaching company like, Brian Tracy or John Maxwell or Jack Canfield, you can go do that if you want. Or you can just have a small little, business in the local area, and you can do well with that. And so I was like, I wanted that freedom, that flexibility, because after 23 years in the Army, getting divorced and not seeing one of my sons grow up, he's 16 now, and him always living in another state as me, and then and having these 4 little ones now, I was like, I needed to have some kind of lifestyle where I can actually be a part of my kid's life, because I'd missed so much of it. And so that's kind of the reason why I decided to go in that arena. Plus, it's just helping people, become successful has been fun, and all they needed was a little bit of coaching, a little bit of push, and a little bit of accountability. And, in the Army, you're all about accountability. So,
yeah.
So when a client first comes to you, what are your steps to kind of pick their brain and figure out which direction they want to go, which direction to push them?
Yeah, so it's really up to them. I mean, I always ask them, like, what's the classic question is, what brought you to me, right, initially? And they'll say, okay, well, this is, whatever it may be. This is why I came here. And I'm like, okay, well, why now? Why is that? Why is it such a problem now? Why not wasn't a problem yesterday or the day before? And they'll kind of walk me through that. And so I can kind of understand the background a little bit. And then I'll ask them, say, why me? What is it that you think that I have from what you saw? Because you reached out to me. So why me? Why do you think I have what it is that you need? And they'll tell me. And then that kind of helps me, again, triangulate what they're going through. And then those are some very classic coaching questions you're going to find. I'll ask people like, what's causing you the most stress right now? And they'll say, I'm having trouble with difficult conversations at work, because I've worked with a lot of folks within Fortune 500 companies that want to get to that director or that manager level. And so they're on the leadership track and they're like, well, I got to be able to manage a team. I have difficult conversations. I got this one employee I'm challenged with. I just need to be able to work through this and, help the team function better. And so we kind of work through a lot of stuff like that. That's, again, a lot of classic military stuff. You lead small teams and then you lead larger teams. But, it's a lot of stuff like that. We also talk about where they're at right now and then where they want to go. So what does it look like? And so that's for me is I know if they're ready to come to coaching, if they have a very clear picture of where they want to be at. And a lot of my folks, like I said, will tell me, well, I'm looking for this promotion. I want this promotion within the next 3 to 6 months. I'm working towards this. I'm getting into this leadership track at work. And if everything goes well, then I'll get that promotion, and sometimes it could be like a $20,000, increase, depending on which company they're on. So it's a big deal for them. So the investment is worth it at the end. And then that's the other thing is they have to put a little bit of skin in the game, right? They have to be able to invest, and it's not an investment not only in themselves, but it's the rest of their life, really. I mean, because that's the next step for them to be successful. And so as long as they're willing to make the commitment, show up on time and do those type of things, again, it goes back to, some of the things you were taught. Military should be on place, right time, right uniform, all those things. As long as they're committed to doing that, then it's well worth me working with them. And there's no real major issue that we can't work through. It's just them having the willingness to put in the time and actually getting outside their comfort zone. And, and they'll say, well, I don't think that's going to work for me. And we try and figure out, okay, well, why isn't that going to work for you? Well, because I think, and I'm like, okay, well, now we're going into self-limiting thoughts because now you're blocking yourself from success. And so they have to be willing to kind of step out on that edge a little bit and take some risk, and push themselves outside their boundaries.
I think that's a big thing that happens nowadays. I mean, I know it happened with me and Kevin for a while is the fear barrier and the inadequacy that they feel. And I think it's a big thing nowadays that people have it and I don't think they believe in themselves like they should. It's like Kevin said once, what'd you say? Be like a 3-year-old dancing around in his underwear.
Yeah.
Said something like, oh man, I totally forgot I said that.
Yeah, I can't.
It said something like, have the confidence in yourself to dance around like a 3-year-old would in his underwear.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go out and do stuff, man. I mean, I never thought I would have started a podcast, and I actually went to a conference, right? And I've been kicking the can around for 2 years, like, I'm going to do it, but now's not the right time. I don't know what I want to do it on, and I kept making excuses. And then I spent 3 days at a conference with a guy, and he had started his podcast the year before, and it was taking off, and he's just like, just do it. He says, just start. Figure it out later. Just start. And I'm like, you know what? That's kind of my own advice. That's what I should be doing. I should be telling myself that. And I just needed somebody else who's not even a coach to kick me in the can and say, just do it. And then I was just like, you know what? Fine. And I developed some stuff, and then I scratched it and developed some more stuff, and then I took off with it. It just took me a couple iterations of, actually putting things into action, like, okay, well, let me create some cover art. And then, okay, well, let me write out the first 5 episodes, and what does it look like? I don't like this. And so, and I had to figure out which direction I wanted to go. And eventually I found that direction. I just had to get started and get some licks in. And it, you know, at the beginning, it sucked. I go back and listen to the first 5 episodes, and I'm like, oh, it's so much, it's garbage. And it still sucks today, but, you know, but I'm critical of myself, right? So you're always going to be more critical of yourself than, you know, but people come out and they're like, oh man, that was great. You know, and I'm like, are you serious? It kind of goes back to, I went to a speech contest one time, and I won the first 2 contests, in which made me go to the 3rd round, and it was over a course of a few months. And so each stage, you know, you would move on to somewhere else and go to another place, and the competition got harder and harder. I got up on stage, and they asked, you know, I was killing it, right? Won first in both contests. And then I got to the final round at the district finals, and I got up on stage and I was ready to go. I drove 2 hours to get to the contest. I was preparing in my head. I was listening to all this motivational stuff, you know, I was pumped up, ready to go. And they get up there and they were like, what's the first joke that you've ever committed to memory? And I was like, seriously? A joke? You want me to tell you a joke? And because it was an impromptu contest. So I didn't know the question that they were going to ask me until I stepped up on stage. And so I had 2 minutes to kind of spit something out of my mouth. And I couldn't think of a joke. So I talked about how I'm not a funny guy. You know, I'm very demanding, very driven, you know, determined. You know, I started talking about, you know, my personality, and I got through the 2 minutes. And then I was so frustrated. You know, I sat down in the corner, waited for the other contestants to go through. My face was red. You know, I was mad. I'm like, oh man, I let my guys down at home. You know, I let myself down. I embarrassed myself. You know, I was just like cutting myself down left and right in my head. And then as soon as the contest was over and they were waiting for the judges to decide who won, I had like 15 people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, that was the toughest question that anybody would have ever asked. I would have not been able to speak, but you lasted for 2 minutes and talked about something and recovered from a hard question that you couldn't even answer. And you explained why, and you told us all, you know, and you were just up there and you had the courage. And I was like, wow. I was like, you know, like, you inspired me, you know, like I didn't think, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And I was just like, and that kind of took me back from it. And I'm like, no matter how bad you think you did, you're still inspiring other people, you know, and if other people are looking up to you, you know, at least you got up on that stage and they're watching you. And, you know, no matter how bad you do, right, it's more than what they put themselves through, and they're looking up to you, and you may have inspired them to kind of take that next step next time that comes back around. So, and let them face their fears. And, you know, I was just, you know, and I went back and I kind of learned some lessons from all that. And I was just got really motivated after that. And I actually ended up being on the Speakers Bureau after that. So, because people saw my ability to be put in the spot, you know, in that moment, and not be able to really answer the question, but be able to react professionally and conduct myself well. And so I got an opportunity to be on the Speakers Bureau in the region. So it was cool, which is cool. You know, I mean, so even if you overcome adversity, right, good things can still happen, you know, even though it feels like you're at rock bottom. So.
Well, I think this is a good segue because we're talking about questions here. We have one question that we always ask because it's the only one we really thought was good because it's kind of unifying to everybody, but it's different with everybody. The question is, in your personal thought, what is success to you?
Yeah, so really success for me, and it's really what the whole focus around my coaching business is creating an impact that lasts 3 or 4 generations. It's leaving my fingerprint on something. So there's a quote by Mother Teresa that says that if you cast a stone into a pond, it creates a ripple effect. And that's the kind of thing that I want to do. If I can have that kind of impact, right? And it's not just, you know, just for me, but my kids, right? And my kids and their grandkids, you know, and I want to have that kind of impact. And the reason why I say that, I grew up very fortunate, even despite all my hardships and all the challenges that I had. I was very fortunate because I had a set of grandparents that kind of stepped into my life a little bit. Now, my grandfather was only there every once in a while. He was there. He probably stopped by the house once a week to check on me, you know, and, you know, it took me hunting on Saturdays, you know, rabbit hunting and stuff like that, you know, kind of teach me some stuff. But, and he was consistent like that. Every week I would see him. he was able to instill in me family pride, So, before we got on, we kind of talked a little bit about my Scottish ancestry, going all the way back to Scotland. And he would tell me the story of my family and how they came across to the United States in the late 17th century, pre-colonial days, and how they were the first white settlers west of Allegheny Mountains, and he would tell a story about Follow Through the River, which is a movie about a woman who was got into a French and Indian engagement, and she was captured, and then 7 years later she found her way back, after escaping, and had to, through the wilderness from Kentucky through Ohio and back into Virginia again. And so all these stories that they kept telling me, about him and having his 14 brothers and sisters, my two grandfathers that served in the Civil War, and he would constantly tell these stories where they seemed like titans, right? These huge icons. And so for me, they were my heroes growing up. And so after he passed away, I went and kind of took, his larger in life, personality, and his love. And he was probably the poorest guy in the world. He had nothing to his name when he passed away, except for a pocket knife and a camera, right? And some clothes on his back. He had nothing, but you wouldn't know that when you met him. He was the friendliest guy. He treated everybody well. And when I took a look at all that, I'm like, okay, what really is true success? And it's having that kind of impact. His kids loved him. He was the center of the family. Everybody surrounded him constantly. He was kind of that nucleus, right? And so, and his impact, right, is still having an effect on other people, just like, my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and all them. They're still impacting us. And so they were like pioneers for the most part. And, just the stories that they told, it still resonate through each generation of my family, and we're constantly retelling those stories, and they inspire and create drive and passion in all our the bloodline all the way down, to me and my children. And so I'm retelling those stories. And so, I mean, storytelling is a great way to motivate people and that sort of thing, but it's just what they did, it's like they had nothing. And they made something, and they've got to this point, and they've given us this opportunity, and that we're at right now. And that's what success is to me, is giving my children and my grandchildren that opportunity to do amazing things later if they chose to do it. I mean, I'm not here to tell them that you're going to run my coaching business in 3 to 4 years, because we all know, that there's very few third and fourth generation businesses, right? Because people lose sight of the vision, right? And so that's kind of where I go back with my coaching business again is what is the vision? What was the initial vision of, the people that started this, and why are all the companies that have lasted over 100 years, like the wiffle ball bat company in Pennsylvania and Coca-Cola and all these companies, why have they lasted the test of time and other companies have come and failed? And that's because they never lost sight of the founder's vision. And so that's what I try to do, is instill that vision and continue to have that resonating impact for 3 or 4 generations. So
I like it.
I do too. I really like it. I think one thing, I mean, with your vision is, people lose sight of their own vision.
Yeah.
And I know I have in the past, and it's disheartening sometimes. And sometimes you just need a kick in the can to get back to where you need to be.
Yeah, so I tell, I help people with that. There's 5 questions that I can help out people out with that right now, and that's, who are you? Who are you? What do you do? Who do you serve? What do they need? And then how are they changed from that? How do you make their life better? Or how is their life better because of that? And if you can answer those 5 questions, you really find your purpose, your mission in life. And your vision is just where you want to go from there. Where do you want to take this? Once you understand all that, all you have to do is decide where you want to take it. And so, and that's, for me, that was, taking everything that I've just kind of, went over with you guys. That's, my cause is that fatherless men thing. It's like, I see the problem in our country right now with this whole thing. And I'm like, there's kids running around that are just, they're struggling, they just need somebody to, healthy, supportive male role model in their life. And so can that have the greatest impact, and how long can I have that kind of impact? How can I throw that stone in the water and cast, create that ripple effect, where the water just ripples from that one little stone? What can I do, and what kind of impact can I have? And that's where I found that was my cause, because that was something I was very passionate about and I grew up with. And I was like, okay, this is something else. And this needs to be fixed, and nobody's really doing nothing about it. It doesn't get attention, out there in the world, just like human trafficking doesn't get attention. The United States is the #1 culprit of human trafficking. We have the most imports and exports of human trafficking. And that's a lot of minor kids. And it's like we turned a blind eye to this stuff, and I'm like, why are we turning a blind eye to all these atrocious things that are happening in our country? So
I had a thought when you were talking about kids out there that needed guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people I hear, excuse me, say, you don't need to hire a coach. You're an adult. There's no reason to have a coach. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I'd like to write a book. Hire a coach. I'll walk you through it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It shortens the gap, right? That's what a coach does. They just shorten the gap. Yeah. And that's all a coach is it's somebody that has done it before you, right? They're one step ahead of you. And so, and you go through any coach training, you don't have to be like done it 100 times. You just have to have done it once for somebody to walk you through that. Right. And I'm doing that with a lot of different people that I'm working with. I'm helping a teacher right now who's building a course. I've already built the course, a teacher that wants to, have an impact on first and second year teachers, because it's a high transition rate for those teachers, because they get in there and they have trouble controlling classrooms. Again, that's young boys and girls, running around chaotic because they just don't have healthy, supportive parental figures in their lives, because who raises our children these days? The schools and the states. So, and that's because we're not involved. We're a 2-parent working class society. And so we're just not at home as much anymore. And we have all these devices. And so there's a lot of different things. I'm not saying technology and all this is the problem. I'm just saying that we have to be very deliberate about being intentional in our own children's lives. Which is why I picked the career path that I did after I got out of the Army, is that I wanted to be a part of my children's life, and I wanted to raise them, and not have somebody else do it for me. I didn't want daycare doing it. I didn't want the school doing it. I wanted to be a part of my kid's life. And so I wanted to have an impact on it. And so that was important for me because I didn't have that in my life. So I knew what it was like running around and not having that parental supervision. So I tried to make that change. So.
And another thing to add on is people don't want to talk about the hard subjects. You have the human trafficking, you have depression, you have suicide rates, drug abuse. Nobody wants to talk about it because it's a difficult subject. And I think that's one thing that's kind of screwing up society now is nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to see opinions, and nobody wants to be able to get to the brass tacks and actually see what's going on. Me and Kevin talked to a guy a couple episodes ago, and that's exactly what it is everybody wants to know the stats, but they actually don't want to talk about it because it could be scary, and they think talking about it is going to increase the rates of everything, when actually bringing it out, talking about it, being able to get it off your chest actually helps 90% of it.
Yeah. No, yeah, there's a lot of examples of that. If you're a fan of or a student of Stephen Covey, he says first seek to understand before being understood. And if you're not willing to understand the problem, and I'll take it even further, where I will go and tell people, you can try to understand the problem, but a lot of people who haven't experienced the problem try to fix the problem. And if you've never experienced it, how do you know how to solve it? And so, if we want to fix the homeless issue in America, then we need to talk to people that are homeless and help put them in our programs and help them show us how to fix this problem, because they're the ones who've experienced it. They know what the pain is. They know what they need. I don't know what they need. I've never been homeless. I've lived in low-income housing before, but I'm not going to go try and solve a problem that I know nothing about. And so I grew up fatherless. So that's why I say, I'm here to help, support, and, try and solve that problem, because I know what that experience is. Bring the people in there that know what the pain is. And then they can really connect with those people who really need that. Because if you come along, I've came along homeless people before, and I've been told off by a few, because I would just try to hand out $1 and they're like, get the heck away from me, I don't want your money, and it's like, that's not what they need. And so I don't know what they need. I don't know what to provide them, because I haven't got to sat down and, talk to them, had that conversation. They may not need a sack lunch. They may not be their problem, So I think we just really have to try to really, like you said, understand the problem. The other thing is I speak about human trafficking every once in a while, and I have tonight, just because I did when I was in college, I did my master's in counseling. I did a paper on human trafficking. And I worked with, not worked with her, but I spoke with the Samaritan woman a couple of times. She runs this place out in Maryland, where it's a rehabilitation home for people who've been in human trafficking. And her biggest challenge is she said that it's not stopping the crime, because we know who these people are who are doing it, and we have the resources to be able to do that. The problem is it's fixing the problem after that. It's not getting after the problem. It's the support that comes after that. And so what do you do with a victim of human trafficking after the perpetrator has been arrested and gone to prison, or, whatever has happened to them? They don't know anything else. They've been doing this for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. This is the only thing that they know. And so what they do is they end up leaving the support homes and going right back into the same profession they were, because they just don't have the right amount of support, or the funding's not there to provide them the support. And so her big thing is trying to teach them skills and trades, and get them education so they can find something, productive to do in society, rather than going back to the same thing that they knew before, which was all they ever have known before. And that's sex trafficking, or, something like that. And she's like, that's the problem, is that we don't provide enough support on the back end. We want to see the perpetrator go to jail. But once the perpetrator goes to jail, we turn a blind eye to that. We don't let these people come into our neighborhoods and live right alongside of us, because, that's those people, right? Those are them people. They live over there. We live over here in our nice little cozy neighborhood, And so we kind of shy away from those folks, but it's crime, oh my gosh, how can you let this happen? We got to put these guys into jail. But then when it comes to supporting them after the fact, there's no support there. And that's the biggest problem we have. And there was a thing I was reading not long ago where it says that there's enough money in the world, enough charity in the world to fix America, all the problems in the world. We just don't have enough people to provide time and support. So we've got enough money. We can fix the problems of the world. We just don't have enough people that care and want to participate and want to help. So,
well, and to add on that, with society, I heard a quote, and I think it holds true to almost everything, because the quote goes, "People no longer listen to understand; they listen to respond."
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin. But I mean, especially like I work in the wastewater industry. I work for the state. I'm governed by the federal government. And it's irritating because they're like, yeah, you got to do this no matter what. And it's like, well, but you can't. Well, you got to do it. Too bad. And it's like, okay, but, why don't you want to understand? And it's frustrating when you hear that, because it's like, okay, well, but why don't you want to put the time in? Mm. Like I had a rusted out old Ford. Kevin knew about it. And I went to an ex-girlfriend's house up in, the hoity-toity world. And they all hated me because I had an old rusted out truck. But I'm like, why do you hate me because of that? I mean, you don't know who I am. Hate me for who I am, not for my vehicle or how I look. I have a cousin that was the same way. I mean, she would just hate you because she saw you. And I'm like, get to know the person and then hate them for who they are. Don't just hate them because you see them.
Yeah, we're kind of missing the boat on that. So I mean, it's the vanity. We live in this, it's this vanity, world right now. You gotta have 6-pack abs and all this other stuff, and you gotta have this, drive, have your own private jet, or drive a BMW or whatever it is, or you're not deemed successful, which is great. You guys asked that question, because it's different for everybody, I mean, and I'm not there to say that somebody that doesn't want to, if they have a 20-year career in the military and that's all they want to do, then that's fine. They're successful. I mean, that's what they set out to do, and they achieve success. Can you achieve success every day? Yeah. I mean, there's different conversations about all that, but, just because you walk and talk a certain way, it doesn't make you, any less. I mean, look at the dudes down in Louisiana that are the crocodile hunters, I mean, most people look at them like, they were uneducated and not doing this and, just complete, goofballs. Why would you want to do something like that? But look at what they found. They found a precious commodity, or in alligators. And now I know the industry is taking its hit over the last couple of years, but because I watched the show, so I understand it. But I mean, they're out there, living something, which I talk about impact and tradition, and that has been going on for centuries, since not decades, because their family was involved in it, and it was something that they have developed a set of values around, right? And they're teaching their kids these same values through this type of hunting, and they made a TV show out of it. I mean, and now they're doing very well, and it was just for doing something that they were very passionate about. So, yeah, I mean, it just shows you, I know, what is the other one? The Duck Show. I can't think of what it's called.
Duck Dynasty.
Yeah, Duck Dynasty is another one, People look at them like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. Look what they're doing, They're spreading a message. They have values. They're showing, the type of people that they really are. They're down home, very tender-hearted people, They just love duck hunting, and, they love the country lifestyle, and they're very, very deep and devoted to their faith. This is what's wrong with that. They believe and they stand for something, and they're not going to waver because somebody doesn't approve, So I appreciate people like that to stand up and be themselves and, stand for what they believe in. So I have a lot of respect for
I
that.
like that. I mean, that's how I think life should be, should be able to do what makes you happy and enjoy your life.
Well, yeah, America says that they guarantee the pursuit of happiness, but they don't guarantee happiness. So, I mean, you have to pursue it. So, and they're pursuing it. I mean, and they're living it. So, I don't think you have to. Integrity is probably a big issue we have right now, and I would say in the world, because people are shifting. They're changing views based off of what's popular, and or what seems right at the time, but what's always right isn't always right. So
funny enough, you talk about integrity. Me and Kevin know a bunch of people that we now are like, their integrity level kind of just dropped to the floor. And I mean, you see it all the time. It's kind of rampant, and people take it as the new norm, because that's just what people do now. Instead of going, okay, I'm going to set the bar a little higher for myself. I don't care about these people. I'm going to be me. But now it's like, oh, you've got to be this standard, and you got to be this person. You got to be that person. And it's kind of nice when we talk to everybody is, no, I'm going to be me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I want to help people. And it always wraps back around to, I'm successful because I help others, not because I just help myself.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you made a great point. I mean, one of the things that I do say quite often is that you are your only competition. So you don't have to compete with all these other people around here. You don't have to do all these things that everybody else is doing. We kind of get into that mindset, and I say the academic world, the school systems kind of teach you, that you have to do this, this, and this, or else you're not going to be successful. And I don't think we push creativity enough. We don't let kids explore. We teach kids how to do a certain task over and over and over, rinse and repeat, and we just become mindless at some point. It's like most of us on our electronic devices. It's just a mindless thing that we do now because we've been trained to sit there and just do this rinse and repeat stuff all the time. It's like being an assembly line worker. We really haven't gone away from the industrial revolution where you're taught just to do one little thing and you just do that over and over and over. It's like basically sprockets. You're putting a cog on the wheel. That's all you do is put that one cog on the wheel all the time. And so we haven't really learned to be very creative. We're not embracing creativity, and creativity isn't just for, musicians and artists, and things like that. I've seen, I had a guy at work, that I worked with a while back. He used to build guns, and he used to build these beautiful guns, right? And I was just like, holy cow! And he would bring them all the time and show it to us. And I was like, where'd you learn how to do this? I just love doing it. He's like, it helps me kind of get out of my mind, get out of work, and it's my hobby, and I like to do this. And he's like, I just, I love it, and I was like, well, that's cool. I was like, these are like very beautiful pieces, of weapons and, guns and things like that. And so, I mean, it's not something that I get into a lot. I mean, like I said, I grew up rabbit hunting with my grandfather, so I know how to shoot a shotgun. I mean, I've got a couple rifles in my closet, when I've deer hunted before, but it's been years. And, I've always loved rabbit hunting growing up because, again, you're teaching a discipline, you're teaching values, and you, if you really don't understand it, and that's, I guess, you go back to the whole gun movement again. It's about values. It's not about anything else. It's about values. It goes right back down to that. And, I was like, we're not teaching values, and when people get out of control, and they misuse weapons, it's because they haven't been taught the values. So,
funny enough, you bring up teaching. My wife's a teacher, and she was really struggling a couple weeks ago. She's like, how do I prove that these kids are learning something? And I'm like, you have to be able to give them value, and what they pull out of it is what you're teaching them. And like after I said that, she's changed her entire way of teaching because now she brings the value to the table and sees what's absorbed instead of doing what I think is, in my mind, retarded. Because I mean, I've been out of school for a long time. I've gone to a trade school for a little bit, and I've sworn off college because we won't go down that rabbit hole. But she gets irritated sometimes. She's like, I don't feel that they're not learning anything. And I'm like, well, that's the problem nowadays is you have to feel vindicated about somebody getting something. All you can do is do your best to bring the value forward, and what they absorb is all that they're going to absorb.
Yeah, you bring up a great point there, and that's very admirable, because I think that the way we got our education system, designed today, it's all about scholastic testing. But I don't really think you see the full impact of a teacher had on a child until 3, 4, maybe even 10 years down the road. It wasn't, when I was growing up in school, I got to the point where I was got involved in drugs and alcohol, and I quit, all the sports, and I was going down this other path. And I had a coach, that brand new coach in the school, didn't know me from anybody. Going back to, what we conversation earlier is don't judge people by, by the book of the cover of the book. Said, hey, why don't you just come try it out for a few days? He goes, I need people on the team. He's like, I'm the new coach this year. We're starting over. It's not like it used to be, it's going to be different. And I'm like, okay, well, he wouldn't stop bothering me about it. Right. So I was like, okay, I'll just go try out for a few days, and then I won't do it no more. And I actually got in there and I actually enjoyed it. Only because he planted the seed. He got me to come out and try something, to explore something that I would have, because I was telling myself, I already told myself I wasn't going to like it, and he knew that. He could see that. And then, I had another teacher, and I ended up spending the next 3 or 4 years, and wrestling, and it helped me get out of the bad direction that I was going, and kept me out of trouble and into the school on the bus with a good group of guys that I got to bond with, learn how to develop male relationships, and have male mentors, so it kind of helped pull me out of that system that I was in. But then I also had another guy, he was a shop teacher, and I had him as a junior high teacher, and I was in high school, and I was just being a jerk. I mean, I was just being a jerk in class one day, and I was just trying to just get kicked out. I think that was the only purpose of me doing what I was doing. I was just like, you know what, today is not the day. I don't want to be here. I'm going to give this teacher crap, and I'm going to make fun of people in class, and I'm just going to be that jerk today. And he pulled me out of the classroom and to his office out in the shop area. And because we were doing some drafting or something in the classroom that day. And so he pulled me out, and he's like, what the hell is your problem? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, what is your problem? He's like, you want to be a jerk? Be a jerk to me. He goes, you want to put up fist, He goes, let's do it. And I was just like taken back, and he wasn't going to kick me out of class. He's like, that's what you want me to do. And at some point he had said something to me, and I just completely like spilled the beans, right? I told him about my entire life, my parents getting divorced, not feeling like I was ever wanted, never seeing my stepdad, not knowing who my biological father was. And I was just like, I just barfed it all out right in that moment, And I saw a tear go down that guy's eye, and he was this, big, burly, real tough, mean hands, shop teacher. And I saw that, and I was like, he's like, hey, have you ever, he goes, he told me he cared about me, and that if I needed somebody to talk to, he was there for me, and to just get with him. And, I could get out of class anytime I wanted to come have a conversation with him, after I spilled the beans. And he goes, hey, if you ever tell anybody I cried in front of you, he goes, I'm going to punch you right square in the nose. And he goes, I might look like a lion on the outside, but I got a tender heart like a lion on the inside. And so I was like, okay, I says, that's cool. And I remember that. And that teacher had, in that moment, in that 5 minutes that teacher gave me, stopped class, took me out to address an issue. That 5 minutes that teacher gave me was a lifelong lesson that continues now, 25 years later.
It's funny that this conversation came up in this topic, because Brad and I were talking just the other day about I was a freaking shithead in school, and it stemmed from kindergarten all the way until I started college. But I was like, I don't think that we appreciate our teachers enough. And I kind of reminisced on a time I was in the principal's office like every day. And we had this principal, and he kind of did the same thing. And instead of just punishing me, he was trying to be positive. Like, he was having me help him hang up the motivational posters in the hallways and stuff like that, And I tracked him down on social media the other day and sent him a message, and I said, hey, dude, I know that you don't remember me, but I was probably your biggest pain in the ass, and I just wanted to tell you that I appreciate you and that you were a fantastic educator.
Yeah. I mean, he could probably go to sleep a lot better now. I mean, but I think that's probably the most rewarding thing that even guys I've worked with, 20 years ago, when they were one of my soldiers and stuff. I mean, they reach out to me and just say, hey, I know I was an idiot, and I was a jerk, and I did a bunch of stupid stuff, and you had to go through a lot, and deal with all my personal problems. They're like, but I really do appreciate the time that you invested, and I'm like, that's all I needed for the rest of the day. I was like, I'm good. I can go home now. I'm going to go home and sleep really good tonight, but I mean, that makes, outside of all the, the trophies and the rewards and all the money and all the other stuff, I was like, that's huge for me. That's relational currency, and that's more valuable than anything else I've ever had, the human capital. And you can't, there's no price that you can put on that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I just stutter a lot. I think that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people just need to learn to reach out a helping hand. Be a decent person. Don't be selfish, and be patient with the younger generation, because they're learning.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's all business is really serving other people, and if you, and that's, I think why business gets a bad rap, right? Because we're in the business of taking care of people. We're in the business of helping somebody solve a problem, and they're going to pay us for it, right? But when you focus on the money, I think you get it wrong. It's backwards, right?
Right.
You focus on serving the people. You provide value. You provide a solution to a problem, and you make their lives better. And then in the end, you get a reward for that service that you provide. So, you just have to make yourself a value to people. And I think we all have unique value within each one of us. And, whether that be, anywhere from gunsmithing to teaching to coaching to whatever it is, we all have this unique skill within ourselves. And that if we don't share that, then, we're actually, I kind of feel like we're stealing from other people. So, you're not sharing that with others. And, not to share that is almost a crime in itself.
I love it. Well, do you have anything else, Brad?
I don't think so. I think this is probably the deepest we've ever gone on a podcast. I really liked this one.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time, and we appreciate you.
Hey, no problem, guys. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. I mean, I love the opportunity. I love to get out there and, just kind of talk about the things that are near and dear to my heart and, to at least, go 2 or 3 levels deep in that conversation and talk about it. Because I think people just need to, like I said earlier, really just understand, and then we just got to open our ears up and close our mouths sometimes and just listen to the conversations that are being had out there, and we'll figure a lot more out. So